All right, so welcome to the deep dive. We are going to, well, take a deep dive into some pretty cool stuff. And today, it's all about books. Favs reads, this book blog.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
Yeah, it's getting a lot of buzz. Favs, the blogger, just put out their list of five-star reads. It's a wild mix, honestly. We're talking dystopian futures, like way out there stuff, and then thrillers that'll mess with your head, and even, get this, a deep dive into the world of video games, but like in a literary way.
Hmm, interesting. What do you think, like what kind of reader is Favs based on these picks?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's like they're all over the place genre-wise,
Yeah.
but there's definitely something connecting them, some kind of thread.
Right, like they're not just picking books for fun, there's some deeper thinking going on here for sure.
Totally. Okay, so first up, The Guest by Emma Cline. Cline's known for her writing. It's like super sharp, almost surgical.
Oh, I can imagine. Intense.
And this book seems to be just that. It's about this young woman, Alex, and she's like navigating the world of these crazy rich people on Long Island. But she's not really one of them. More like surviving by her wits, maybe using her charm a little bit, to get by.
It's like that feeling of being an outsider, even when you're surrounded by all this wealth and privilege, kind of a lonely existence, even if it looks glamorous from the outside.
Yeah, I can see that. It's like loneliness doesn't discriminate.
Yeah.
Even rich people can feel isolated.
Exactly. And I think Klein is tapping into something really relevant here. We're hearing more and more about this loneliness epidemic, and it's not just affecting people on the margins of society.
That is a whole other layer to this story, doesn't it? And speaking of layers, Fauves calls the ending devastating. Knowing Klein's style, that's probably a good thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah, Klein doesn't go for the feel-good endings, that's for sure.
What do you think she's trying to achieve with that kind of ending, though? It can't just be for shock value.
I think it's about making us confront the hard truths, you know? Klein doesn't shy away from the messiness of human nature. She wants us to sit with the uncomfortable feelings, maybe even examine our own roles in the systems that create this kind of isolation.
Ooh, that's deep. Okay, so from intense social commentary to, well, maybe the future. Book number 2 is Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler. Butler is considered a visionary in science fiction.
Yeah, I've heard that name. Definitely a legend.
And this book, well, it's become even more, I don't know, relevant, maybe even scary in recent years. It's set in this future America, but it's been ravaged by climate change and like everything's falling apart. And we follow this young woman, Lauren Olemina, who basically creates a whole new belief system called Earthseed to help people adapt and survive in this chaotic world.
It's amazing how some authors can just, like, predict the future, you know? Climate change, societal breakdown, it's all happening. It's almost like a warning.
Right, and this book was written decades ago, so it's like she saw it coming. Favs called it a wake-up call. But honestly, it feels more like a prophecy. So we've got isolation, climate change. What's next?
Well, let's see what Favs throws at us. This list is getting pretty intense.
Buckle up, because book number 3 is going to hit close to home for us, especially you. It's all about the literary scene.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's the title?
Yellowface by RF Kuang. And let me tell you, this book has been sparking some serious debate. It's about race, cultural appropriation, ambition, all that juicy stuff in the publishing world. The main character, June, she does something pretty messed up. She steals the manuscript of her dead friend, and then it becomes this huge bestseller.
Wow, that's dark. Sounds like Kwong is holding nothing back.
Nope, she's going all in.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about who gets to tell whose stories, and how far people will go for fame.
June sounds like a character you love to hate. Driven by jealousy, willing to cross any line, but I bet she makes for a compelling story.
Oh, absolutely. Favs called it a masterpiece. And I kind of get it. It's sharp, it's witty, and it doesn't try to sugarcoat the ugly side of the publishing world. So 3 books in, and we've got chilling social commentary, a dystopian future, and now this brutal look at the literary world. What do you make of it so far? Like, what kind of reading experience is Favs putting together here?
It's definitely not a light and fluffy beach read list, that's for sure. But there's a pattern emerging, right? Like Favs is drawn to stories that challenge us, make us question our assumptions. They're holding up a mirror to society, showing us the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, I'm seeing that too. But it's not all doom and gloom, is it? There's something else there. Like, even in Yellowface, with all the satire and darkness, there are moments that feel, well, almost human. like glimpses of vulnerability in the characters.
You're right, it's not just about pointing fingers and criticizing. There's a sense of empathy there, too, even for the flawed characters.
Okay, so maybe it's not all doom and gloom, but it's definitely making us think.
That's the point, isn't it? To make us think, to feel, to question. And we're only 3 books in. I'm already hooked. What's next on this wild ride?
Okay, so we've seen isolation, climate change, even the dark side of the publishing world. What could possibly be next?
Right. I'm on the edge of my seat here.
Well, book number 4 takes us in a totally different direction, but keeps those same deep themes going. It's called How High We Go in the Dark by Sequoia Nagamatsu.
I've heard of that one. It's supposed to be really powerful, right?
Yeah, incredibly powerful. It's set in a world dealing with the aftermath of a pandemic, a really devastating one. And it explores how people cope with all that loss, the trauma, and trying to find meaning when everything's changed.
Wow, that's heavy stuff. Especially, well, after what we've all been through recently.
Exactly. Fauves actually mentioned crying multiple times while reading it,
Mm.
but they also praised the writing, said it was both beautiful and heartbreaking.
That makes sense. I mean, grief and beauty can coexist, right? Like finding those moments of light in the darkness.
For sure. What struck you about this book, especially considering the other books we've talked about, like The Guest and Parable of the Sower, they all seem to deal with these big, kind of universal experiences.
It's interesting, right? Like, Fauves is curating this experience, taking us on this journey through all these different facets of the human condition. And with How High We Go in the Dark, it's like zooming in on grief and resilience, but not just in a personal way, in like a societal way, too.
Yeah, like how communities and whole societies deal with loss and try to rebuild. I mean, we all went through a pandemic recently, so I feel like this book probably hits close to home for a lot of readers.
Totally. Even though the virus in the book is fictional, the emotional stuff, it's all too real. The isolation, the fear, the uncertainty, not knowing what the future holds.
And that feeling of, I don't know, collective grief. Like grieving not just for people we lost, but for a way of life that's gone.
Yeah, I get that. Nagamatsu seems to capture all those nuances, those complicated feelings.
One thing that stands out to me is that How High We Go in the Dark, it doesn't offer any easy answers. It's not like a self-help book on how to deal with grief. It's more like a tapestry of experiences showing all the messy ways people cope and try to move forward.
You're right. It's not about tying everything up neatly with a bow. It's more about like sitting with the discomfort, the complexity of it all, which can be, well, kind of challenging as a reader, but also really rewarding.
Totally. Okay, so we've gone from isolation among the elite to a dystopian future, a brutal look at the publishing world, and now this deep dive into grief and resilience. It's like Fauves is hitting us with all the big questions.
And somehow they managed to tie it all together. Like there's this thread of hope running through it all, even the darkest stories.
So true.
Yeah.
Okay, ready for book number 5. It's a bit of a change of pace, but it still fits with this idea of exploring the human experience.
Hit me with it. What's
Yeah.
the final book on this fascinating list?
It's called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. Now, this one is more about creativity and collaboration.
Ooh, interesting. A bit lighter than the others, maybe.
Maybe a little bit, but it still deals with some pretty complex themes.
Yeah.
It follows these 2 friends, Sam and Sadie, who bond over their love of video games and end up creating a whole gaming empire together.
Sounds like a classic story of friendship, ambition, maybe even a little bit of rivalry.
Definitely all of that. And, their relationship, it's not always smooth sailing. They have their ups and downs, their conflicts, their moments of heartbreak.
So it's not all sunshine and roses. But hey, that's real life, right? No relationship is perfect, especially when you throw in the pressures of success and the creative process.
Exactly. Fauves called it a love letter to creativity, which I thought was really fitting. It celebrates that passion, that drive, that almost crazy willpower it takes to make something new, to bring your vision to life.
I can definitely relate to that. Even doing this podcast, it's a creative process, it's collaborative, it takes work, and it's not always easy. But when you find those moments of flow, when everything clicks, it's magical.
Totally. And it makes you think about the power of collaboration, right? Like how we can achieve so much more when we work together, when we share ideas and support each other. And sometimes those collaborations, they lead to amazing things.
Absolutely. And I think that ties back to the overall theme of Fauve's list. It's about recognizing the full spectrum of human experience, the good, the bad, the messy, the beautiful, and finding those moments of connection, even in a world that can often feel isolating.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So we've journeyed through isolation, climate change, The dark side of publishing, grief and resilience, and now this celebration of creativity and collaboration. What a wild ride.
It's like Fauves took us on a whirlwind tour of the human condition, all through the lens of these 5 incredible books.
And I think that's what makes Favs Reads so special. It's not just about recommending books, it's about sparking these conversations, these deeper reflections on what it means to be human.
Exactly. Fauves isn't just saying, read this. They're saying, let's talk about this. Let's explore these ideas together and see what insights we can uncover, which
Yeah,
is kind of what we're doing here on the deep dive, right?
totally. We're all about diving deep into these sources and finding those nuggets of wisdom, those thought-provoking ideas that make us see the world in a new way. And I think Favs is doing the same thing, just through the lens of literature.
Yeah, and it's like Fauves is saying, look, I found these books that really got me thinking, and I want to know what you think.
Right. It's not just about saying this book is good. It's about why is this book good? And what does it say about, us, about the world?
Exactly. It's like a starting point for a bigger conversation. And I think that's something we try to do here too on the deep dive. It's not just summarizing, it's like analyzing and connecting the dots and, hopefully getting our listeners thinking.
Totally. We're all about those aha moments. So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. Isolation, climate change, the dark side of publishing, grief, resilience, and even celebrating creativity and collaboration, all thanks to Favs 5-star picks.
It's amazing how these 5 books, so different on the surface, can touch on so many universal themes. It's like Fauves gave us this toolkit for understanding, well, the human experience.
That's a great way to put it. Like each book is a different lens to view the world through. And when you put them all together, it's like, wow, we get this much richer, more nuanced picture.
Exactly. And that's what makes Fauves Reads so much more than just a book blog. It's like a community, a space for sharing ideas and having these deep conversations about literature and, life.
So we've come to the end of our deep dive. And as always, I'm left with more questions than answers. Like, what makes a book truly 5-star worthy for you? Is it the plot, the characters, the writing style, or something else entirely? What makes a book stick with you long after you finished it?
Ooh, those are good questions. I think for me, a 5-star book is one that stays with me, that changes the way I see the world, even just a little bit. Those books that make you think and feel deeply.
Yeah, those are the ones that really matter. The ones that become more than just words on a page. They become part of you.
Beautifully said. Well, a huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive into Fauves Reads. We hope you found it as insightful and thought-provoking as we did.
And we hope you'll keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those conversations going. Until next time, happy reading, everyone.